Let's begin with our first topic, which is investing in growth that works for everyone. So the G7 says economic cooperation through the G7 plays a crucial role in supporting the world's middle class and those working hard to join it, particularly by ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared by everyone. So this means championing innovative and gender-responsive solutions to address common challenges such as growing inequality, the changing nature of work, and persistent poverty. Who would like to tackle this question first, representing their country?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting point from Germany's point of view because, I mean, despite the financial crisis, Germany's economy has been stable and growing. And being one of the leading experts has always been quite beneficial to Germany, but then it's been less beneficial to other countries. And that's quite dangerous because this can be a source of instability in the financial system. So I think for Germany, it's really important that the government invests more in the domestic economy, and then German citizens would also buy more products from abroad. And then this could help to correct this imbalance, because in the end, if it's like not beneficial to one country, this whole system could collapse. And I think nobody can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So exporting is a big part of what you'd like to see discussed there?
Yeah.
I've got Carolina next from Canada.
So I think two of the things that I see right now is a shift in energy in terms of, our investments in crude energy like oil and green energy like solar panels and wind energy. And I think we have to really start looking at the new technologies as an investment in the future, which will have ripple effects, not only in creating new jobs, but also creating a new relationship with how we interact with the earth. And that in itself ends up, connecting to the need to make policies that are aware of global and climate change, right? Climate change being a big one for us right now. So I think it's naive to want to see growth and in the way that we've been doing before. I want a better world for my children. I want to leave a better world for my children. And I know that with the technology that we've developed in these last 10 years, we can do that in more sustainable ways. And so we really need to start investing in new technology that is less invasive, less of an extractive culture. And also we need to start looking at an economy from a perspective of investing in people. As a former actress, I know that if you invest in the arts, you generate jobs that are for people and that with people, you can create industries that are about culture and beauty. And I think we really need to start looking at the arts as an investment in our communities. So, and that it generates a lot of other things like it's tied to mental health. So, but we need to do that in a way that it actually tracks the data. So, are the communities, for example, that have a high investment in the arts, do they have lower rates of mental health issues? Like we have to start correlating that data so that we see that there's a whole cost accounting into investing in those still misunderstood industries.
Thank you, Jessica from Italy. What are your thoughts?
We need to adjust our approach to the job situation here in Italy. Like I said, the youth are the by far largest growing unemployed group in the country. People are unable to move out of their family homes and families until early, mid, sometimes late 30s. As well as maybe investing things like the arts, also education here. Investment in education is very, very poor. The salaries for teachers, the benefits for teachers are very, very poor. I'm a teacher myself, I teach kindergarten, so I'm coming at it from a perspective of education. And I tend to see all the solutions orbiting around, starting with education. So if you make it an incentive for teachers to go into the workforce, to teach children about sustainable living, to teach people about equality from the beginning of education, then you can create a better job market around that as well. That's a place in the job market that nobody has really tapped into. Nobody wants to be a teacher here because there are no benefits. You're paid almost nothing as well. I think the mean salary in Italy is €1,500 per month, and a teacher's salary is less than that. much less, and it's almost impossible to live on your own as a teacher as well.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. How about Sarah Jean?
So thinking about some of the issues that other people have talked about and how it relates to Japan and the issue of the wealth gap and the middle class, I think one of the biggest issues we face here is actually the fact we have a big decline in the ratio of people who actually have full-time regular employment with benefits, although it just came out that recent grads, it's the highest rate of university graduates getting job placements, like 97.9% or something this year. Part of it is because we have so few young people. But another issue is that so many people go in as part-time, temporary, dispatched laborers and face a lot of the issues young people face in Italy. But I think there's a bigger issue that we face that might be a little bit different. That's the basic protection of workers' rights. And as long as workers have to work 100, 150 hours overtime a month, our middle class, our what can I say, the workforce will be continually stratified between these people who have full-time life employment, work themselves to death, and then people who say work part-time jobs. And I think that this is this is also making that middle class gap expand between who's in different parts, like the lower middle class and the regular middle class. Still maybe majority of our society is middle class, but the conditions in which people live and work are vastly different. And I think that also is a hindrance to women being more involved in the labor market, because it's impossible, whether it's husband and wife, 2 men, 2 women, if you have a family where one person works 85 hours overtime a month and the other person has a part-time job, to really have economic equality, equal opportunities, because, well, it's hard to have a relationship if one person works 85 hours a week. I didn't mean a month, I meant a week. It's just hard to have, to really have equality for women if you're expected to still take care of the 4 things: the family, the home, your parents, relatives, your kids. So all of these things come together in making the workforce have a lot of challenges, but also gender equality, and then how we can compete in the world, actually, because these things are letting us be left behind. And it's why our position in the gender equity index just keeps going down. Yeah. Well, also, everybody's going ahead. We're going down.
Well, thank you. And I'm wondering what Esther thinks about this.
Hi. Well, it's really interesting, especially what you were talking about investing in like the private sphere and the domestic sphere as well, because I really do think that because the problem, like the gender pay gap, for example, or gender inequalities are systemic, and I do think like if we work in the family, in the private sphere, for example, with parental leave, like according same rights for a dad or mom or a homosexual couple as well, etc., providing these rights, we are working towards like more equality. And how Italy was saying, sorry, I forgot your name, by working in the private sphere, by working like tackling these inequalities, we can like reduce precarity, woman precarity in the workforce, in the financial world, in the public sphere. So yeah, and one thing we see in France, and we work a lot on this with Les Glorieuses, is this question of parental leave, like according the same rights to dad and to a mom. So it's equal, and a mom doesn't have like to work like a part-time, etc., because like she has a domestic task, etc., etc. So I do think like investing in the private spheres are crucial to tackle this gender inequality. Yeah.
Uma, did you want to talk about sort of an overall EU perspective?
Yeah, I think in terms of investing in growth that works for everybody across the European Union. You know, a lot of it, as Jessica and Caroline and Esther have said, is really looking at the difference between male and female in terms of what is happening across the EU between the gender pay gap, but then also family leave, and then furthering that, looking at, for example, migrant women or women who are refugees that have come into the European Union, and the struggles that they face in regards to pay and regards to economic opportunity, you know, and the lack of access that they have for that economic opportunity. So I think, I do think that it is definitely a conversation that needs to happen across the European Union as to how migrant, asylum seekers, refugees, and their job opportunities, you know, how they're being addressed. But then also the innate patriarchy that exists still within many European countries, where women are not given the opportunity to return back to work because of parental leave issues or because of lack of childcare facilities. So, you know, I think across the EU definitely has to be a deeper conversation.
Jem, you get the last word. Anything else that we've missed here from Japan?
So I was just thinking, like, what can the G7 do, and what in general, and in terms of promoting a type of growth that works for everyone. And that would be investing in types of sectors that are actually sustainable and don't tread on the earth so much. Because right now I just see us in a downward spiral and chasing this growth. Let's grow. But then our natural environments are at stake. Our people are at stake because they're exhausted from this system. I'd like to see a whole system overhaul. But that doesn't necessarily apply to Japan. It could, because we're dependent on so many other countries for our natural resources, for almost everything. And so I think we need to look locally and find local solutions instead of chasing the growth dream. Oh, my baby's crying. That's it. Okay, bye.
And love that. Thank you, Jen. I think to bring it all back then, one of to me, what I'm hearing from a lot of you is that it shouldn't just be investing in growth for growth's sake, that we need to be more intentional from a global perspective on what that looks like. And what I'm hearing is maybe it's not so much the traditional places where we've seen economic growth around the world, but it should be looking at new areas. Would anybody like to chime in on that? And we're talking about an environment here and art. And yes, go ahead, Carolina.
So it's about understanding the relationships. I think where we've come to at this point, where the world's so connected now in terms of communication, we're starting to see that all of our industries, they are intertwined and they have a huge impact on one another. And what we do in Brazil impacts what happens in Canada, and what happens in Canada impacts what happens in Japan. So now that we are not so siloed in a global perspective, we have to really put effort into understanding that these, economies, they affect even our migration, right? Like, because there's a reason why people migrate from their countries. It's because their countries are becoming depleted. I mean, I'm from Brazil originally, and I know many migrants from Brazil in Canada who leave because their land's being exhausted by mining companies. And so we really, if we're struggling with all of these things, we need to start looking at how they relate and have a more complex understanding of the economy and how they impact, human movement around the globe.
Because it is so much easier now than it ever before. Jessica, I'm going to give you the last word on this last topic.
I absolutely agree. The countries of the world are no longer isolated, like almost at all. Very few societies live within a bubble nowadays, and I think it is an ethical imperative to operate now with thinking about the repercussions that every economic move that all of our countries make affects every other country within the sphere of our entire global community. And if we are not doing that, if governments are not doing that, if private corporations are not doing that, then we need to rethink the entire system. Full stop.
Thank you. And we've got 4 other topics to discuss, so I'm going to pull this topic to an end. I would like to mention the fact that, of course, everyone on our panel are amazing, brilliant experts in many different areas, but not necessarily experts in what we're talking about today. So these are just our thoughts and our expressions, and what we hope the G7 leaders will be thinking about as they come together in Charlevoix, Quebec, and we are asking them to lead with courage.